just had a young man in Chiang Mai who was expected to be there a little bit longer, and then he got sick. So we got him home, and he is recovering, and now is talking about wanting to go back. That's one scenario we've been working with. Working with parents of young people and really trying to answer their questions and giving them a sense of the protection that's out there for their young people. Thursday, I went to a citizenship swearing in, and for a person that I had been working with, and then the absolute ecstatic joy of watching a person that had, was a Muslim, became a Christian, began working with the church over about 17 years. I mean, this thing's been going on. About $28,000 they've spent. She was threatened at any number of things to be separated from her family and her children, to be sent back to Iran where she would be killed. And to see the swearing in service, it was almost a worship experience to see that. And then Sunday night we went to a celebration for the church over this, because the whole church had been going through it with her. You don't often see raw joy in adults. To see absolute raw joy in so many people was so satisfying. It was really just amazing and people were thanking me for my part in it. And I have to tell you, and I'm not trying to be humble or anything, I'm just telling you the truth. This was something that God let me just be a part of. He was going to do it with or without me, but it was like, this is going to be good. Why don't you come on? I'm going to let you in on this one. And kind of like Moses going through the Red Sea, he didn't do a whole lot except walk, but he got to be a part of it.
Yeah.
That's it was like, so I would say to them, well, this wasn't anything that I did. This was something that God gave me the privilege of being a part of and seeing him work, and then just being it. And I got home last night and Mary and I said, did you ever think we would ever attend a celebrative meeting in a pub for Peggy becoming a citizen? I mean, it's just, it's so out of our world, okay? It was really a wonderful thing. So the insurance, I'm grateful for the insurance because it's good, it's solid, it works. But I am more grateful for the things that surround the insurance, the meeting with the parents, the being able to pray with the parents, the ability to talk to the ministries and share with them blind spots that they have, and then to be able to build these new tools that nobody ever even thought of. But because I've had this dual role, I again, God's given me the privilege of being a part of something, okay? I didn't create the tools, but we have organized them in such a way that churches can use them without tearing up everything that they've been working on. Now they can just integrate this in, and it plugs holes for them. So the insurance is here, but the ministry has been growing around it like Saturn's rings almost, I'm very grateful for the insurance, but the exciting part for me has been the development of these other things. So that's all I really know.
You mentioned when you first started Mission Safe that it was at a mission conference.
Yes.
You had been pastoring, and then you also had done business things, and you had this revelation.
Yep.
but I never heard the details of like how it happened, where you, like all of that. It was just like a brief overview you touched on.
Okay, and it's in the video.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the only mention I've ever heard. I've always been super curious.
All right, so you want me to tell you the story?
Yes.
All right, so God led me through Matthew 14, the passage of scripture where Jesus is walking on the water, and he meets Peter out and the other disciples in the boat, and I was preparing a sermon. And when Jesus, when Peter sees Jesus out on the water, Peter says to Jesus, "If it's really you, call me to come to you." And Jesus gives him one word, "Come." And I thought to myself, in preparing the sermon, you're out in the middle of a big lake, a small ocean. And on one word, you're going to get out of a boat. You've never contemplated anybody walking on water. You've never even seen it. You thought Jesus was a ghost when you saw it. So you're really kind of still in the twilight zone here. You're not trying to get away from anything because they weren't arguing in the boat. It wasn't a bad environment. He was an expert as a fisherman in that boat. So he's very comfortable and very confident in that boat. And on one word, he's going to step over the side of the boat, which I thought, well, that's about paramount to jumping out of an airplane today with no parachute. And I really started thinking of all of the things that he had to overcome to do that. And when I did, I was trying to figure out what was so drawing him, what was so strong that he could overcome all of these obstacles and do something so radical. And the only thing that I could come up with is he got closer to Jesus than if he stayed in the boat. And the deep desire to get closer to Jesus was more powerful than the fear of all the other things. And that's when, in my spirit, I really just heard sort of a question, do you have enough courage to get out of the boat? And audibly, I was alone in a study. Audibly, I said, "Yes, Lord, but I don't know what that means. I want to say yes, Lord, but I honestly don't know what that means." And so Mary and I prayed about it for several months. And I became convinced that my boat was the church that I was pastoring, because I had been there 11 years. I had pastored over 23 years. I had, earned a doctorate. I was pretty comfortable in that situation. But did my desire to want to be closer to Jesus overweigh my fear of leaving the comfort? And that's really where I had to make the decision to step out of the pastorate. And so when I was talking to my family, my youngest daughter said, "Well, can we go to a church where a lot of the kids that I go to school with go?" And so that was Johnson Ferry Baptist Church. And there I knew the pastor. We were good friends. And so we agreed yes, because the church that I was pastoring was the only church she ever knew. And so Johnson Ferry is a very missions-minded church. And so when I left the pastorate, I went through a period of time where I was trying to search out what God wanted me to do. And he opened the door for me to start working in insurance. And that was not something that I ever wanted to do, thought I would do. But that was the door that opened, and so I was going to be faithful. And so I was doing some insurance sales, and God had really blessed that. I had become, in a relatively short period of time, 5 years, I had become in this area of sales the #1 salesperson in the U.S. I mean, that was just by God's grace. He just opened doors for me. And that's how I met John. And while we were at church, every year we have what's called a World Missions Conference, and so they bring missionaries in from all over. And I was sitting in the worship service on a Sunday morning, and my wife and my youngest daughter were going on a mission trip to Peru. And so it was very much on my heart, and I had been feeling while I was selling insurance like my life had just been dissected. I mean, all this time in the seminary learning the languages and studying and leading the church, and now I'm over here talking to people about life insurance and long-term care and tax benefits and things like that, and it seemed like my life was just dissected into two separate parts. And I remember being in that worship service and bowing my head and holding my hands like this and saying, Lord, you clearly led me into the ministry. You've called me. I know that calling is real. And I loved shepherding people. I love the relational side of it. But you have now called me into this business side of things involving insurance. And I did that to get closer to you, but I'm not understanding how they're going to intersect. And I literally had my hands like this with my head bowed, and I said, Lord, if there's any way that you can take these two parts of my life and bring them together, that is how I want to serve you. And so when I finished that prayer and the service went on, I left that service and went to the missions pastor at Johnson Ferry and asked him if I could see the insurance policy that my wife and daughter were going to be using when they traveled to Peru. And he said, sure, I don't know what it says. Tell me what it says, because he and I are good friends. And I said, okay. So that Sunday afternoon, I took it home. I read it and outlined it, and it was literally an international automobile policy that if a person was injured in an automobile accident, they would have international medical insurance up to a little bit. But I knew that nobody on the mission trips from the church drove vehicles. So it seemed like a terrible match for what I was expecting when we were told, yes, they will have insurance for the trip. And so I went to him on that Monday and I had it all highlighted and showed him, and he went, oh my. And this is a large church. They do about 80 mission trips a year out of this church. About 2,500 people go on mission trips. And I thought to myself, if they don't know really what they're doing, there's a lot of churches that don't know what they're doing, or somebody hasn't said it in non-insurance words so that they can grasp what is the best way to go. And so then I started working with trying to figure out how to build a product that would work for the churches and that would be in the right price range. And so I go to a Tuesday morning Bible study, have for over 25 years, and one of the men in there was an executive with Chick-fil-A. And so I asked him to give me a copy of what Truett Cathy traveled on. And he got that to me actually that same week, because I was in the church service on Sunday. On Monday, I was talking to the missions pastor. On Tuesday morning, I had my Bible study. Tuesday afternoon, I had Truett Cathy's international medical insurance policy. And I began going through it and highlighting and saying, we don't need this, we don't need this, we do need this, we need this. And so I took that and came to a conversation with World Insurance. And they were wanting to talk to me about selling long-term care and life insurance and all these other things because of that's what I had excelled in. And I shared with them that I wanted to work with international medical insurance and work with churches. And there wasn't somebody that was really doing that actively anymore. And so they were struggling with, would it be viable? But the Lord opened the door. So Johnson Ferry was my first client, and then North Point was my second. Andy Stanley's ministry was my second, and then from the referrals from there, it went, and now we cover about 1 million people going on mission trips and international travel a year. And that's the miracle of Mission Safe. When I get concerned, I remember being in the boat. And there is nothing that I have faced that was more challenging than stepping out of the pastorate. And I keep seeing whatever circumstance that I'm in, I see that as God using that to draw me closer to Him, because that was the original purpose for me leaving the pastorate. And so every single situation that I face, I now look at it as, how is God using this to draw me closer to Him?